Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being with us this evening at Space Studio. We are delighted to welcome you to the opening of Nasreen Mohamedi's exhibition, courtesy the Glenbarra Art Museum. Space Studio is delighted to host this exhibition of nearly 50 works by Nasreen Mohamedi in partnership with the Glenbarra Art Museum. We have with us this evening the founder of the museum, Mr. Maasanori Fukuoka, with his daughter, Shiska. Welcome. Mr. Maasanori first visited India in 1975. He was initially drawn to India as it was the seat of Buddhist learning. He returned to India between 20 to 25 times over the next 15 years, but bought his first painting only in 1990. It was a trip to the NGMA in Delhi, and specifically Hussein's Cyclonic Silence, that moved him greatly and led him to seek out galleries where he could purchase works by Hussein and other artists he had seen, which are now in the museum collection. When he began buying Indian art in 1990, it was not as a collector, but as a self-appointed envoy for Indian art in Japan. Mr. Maasanori's approach to art has always been a personal one. The collection is a reflection of his changing personal mission over time. He opened the Glenbarra Museum in 1991 to share the works of approximately 60 Indian artists of the 20th century with a Japanese audience. In the last decade, the Glenbarra Museum has loaned the works of Nasreen Mohamedi, which I hope all of you have had a chance to look through and will come back over the next month, for international exhibitions that then travel to 11 cities across Europe, UK, and USA. For the first time since entering the museum's collection, these works are being displayed together in India in a traveling exhibition across 4 cities. Thank you for this collaboration, Mr. Maasanori, and for creating a platform through this exhibition for such a large audience in Baroda, which was special to Nasreen as well. I'd like to invite you to say a few words, please.
Good evening, everyone. I've come to Baroda for the first time. Nasreen Mohamedi brought me here to share her works with you. Okay. I have started her collection since the mid of 1990s. Driven by the curiosity and the desire to understand her works better. Today, after 30 years, I don't know how much I have been improved, but I come to like her works more and more. I brought 49 works here, and many of them, as she said, loaned to museum exhibition in Europe and America, but sadly never been to India. This is why I brought the works to India. I'd like to thank Space Studio for hosting this exhibition. Professor Gulam Sheikh for a talk. And Dariban Koshe Pandor for making the exhibition possible. Thank you very much. Please enjoy. Thank you.
I'll just give you a brief introduction, which I'm sure Nasreen Mohamedi doesn't need one, before I invite Gulam Bhai to speak about her. Nasreen Mohamedi was born in Karachi in 1937 and raised in Mumbai. After studying art at Central St. Martin's in London, she worked in Europe before returning to India in the 1960s. She joined the Faculty of Fine Arts here at MSU in Baroda in 1972. It was here in Baroda that she then developed her abstraction, producing small-scale geometric drawings. She continued to live and work here until her untimely death in 1990. An inspiration for many artists, Mohamedi's subtle yet its strong line drawings and work set her apart as one of India's noteworthy modern artists, working with minimalism and abstraction, not just in drawings, but also in photography and other mediums that she explored. I'd like to introduce and welcome our speaker for this evening, Gulam Mohammed Sheikh. Gulam Bhai and Nilima were amongst Nasreen's closest friends and peers in Baroda. When we invited Gulam Bhai, an incredible artist in his own right, to speak about Nasreen this evening, the conversations and thoughts that came up were nostalgic memories that rounded Nasreen not just in her career, but also as a friend, a travel companion, a person, and a human being who shared so much with the people who were very fortunate to encounter and spend time with her and learn from her. With much anticipation, please join me in welcoming Gulam Bhai to share with us his time with Nasreen this evening. Thank you.
पानी ले लो हाँ थोड़ा थोड़ा कोंचो करेगा Can you hear me? I have spoken on a number of artists. Some of them were my friends. But speaking on Nasreen somehow makes me slightly emotional. And you may perhaps see it in the course of my little talk. Nasreen and I share the same birth year. She should have been 85 today, but she passed away at the age of 53. And in the intervening years, I have seen Nasreen grow in stature, much greater than she had while she was alive. If I remember it right, I saw her work for the first time in 1959 in a gallery which was also called Gallery 59, opened by an artist called Bal Chabra in Bombay in the Bhola Bhai Memorial Institute, just outside on the outer part. But I came to know her a little later. When I was in England between 63 and 66, I learned she was in France. But again, I missed her. Or perhaps I did meet her, but I don't remember. I returned in 66 from England, and Nasreen was, I think, already here. She was living in a Barsati, which is an upper floor, small flatlet in the city of Delhi. And we frequented this place like so many of her friends. She had great friends with people like Yamini Krishnamurti, a dancer, Sarveshwar Dayal Saxena, a writer, a Hindi poet, besides many an artist. And of course, she was a chief attraction in many an event, but she hardly attended those events. She was always spoken about. By nature, I do not know how to put it, but if I say she was not very outgoing, I may not be off the mark. She remained kept to herself, retaining her own sort of whatever identity that she preferred. So those 4 or 5 years in Delhi, I met her a number of times. And I do not know when she met Jairam Patel, with whom she had an ongoing affair of love. And it was Jairam who made it possible for her to come to Baroda. Jairam was also in Delhi, and he had worked in the first in the Weavers Service Center, then Handloom and Handicraft Center in Calcutta, Delhi, etc. I don't know where they met and how they met. But by 71, 72, as was referred to today, 72, she was in Baroda. I have a photograph taken of her and my wife Nilima and our little daughter Samira, who was 1 year old, whom Nasreen is trying to send a kiss. A lovely photograph. When we stayed in a place called Residency Bungalow, which is an old residence house, but it being part of the university administration, I, as one of the teachers, was given accommodation there. So let me go further into her personality. Although it is quite well known that she was very she was not resistant to people. She loved people. But at the same time, she kept a kind of a distance and lived in her own space. When she came to Baroda, she changed the place 3 times. Twice she was in an area called Fatehganj. Okay. And then she moved into a place which is now near our residence in an area called Pratapganj. This multi-story building is called Lakshmi Niwas, where she spent a number of years. She also became a colleague of mine, not because when I was in art history, I knew her very well. But then I moved into Department of Painting, and she became a closer colleague. And Nilima also taught for about 3 years during that period. So let me come back to the way she lived. It was a small room, but that she cleared off all furniture. And she had the floor absolutely polished. And everything was painted white. It was customary for all of us to go there by removing our shoes or footwear and sit on the floor. And you know how she sat? She sat at the end of the wall, and we sat at the other wall. And she used to say she loved the space between us, something which you may call vacant, which was for her an active space. She loved people who were soft-spoken and spoke less. So there was that kind of an atmosphere, and gradually everybody knew. Of course, her students did, but some of us, friends, also observed that. She usually wore a kind of a white sari with a thin border, or sometimes slightly broader border, not very broad. No. But Nilima tells me that sometimes she wore even the colorful clothes. But that was very rare. Most of the time, either it was grey, black or white sari. And she kept her room and her place as though for herself and for her work. And there she She was working in Delhi, so when she came to Baroda, she resumed the work. But if I remember it right, she gave up oil painting at some stage, and perhaps in 1971-72. When we got married, she gave us an oil as a wedding gift, which we still have, which was lent to the Reina Sofia exhibition. So that was 71, and after that she was doing something on, and if I may say so, not even color, but with ink, basically ink. Somewhere here in the exhibition I saw that the medium is graphite and ink. I have a feeling that most of the time, if not every time, she used ink. But let me go a little further. That she, in a way, started painting, and gradually images, I mean shapes or forms, became minimal. And they, as though gradually receded from her work, leaving the space around them, something like the space in her own room. And eventually it became even, just a little spot here, or a line here, or a strip here. Well, I remember that in 1970, Jyotibai is here, we had an exhibition called Painters with a Camera, and all of us did photography, and we showed our work in Bombay. Nasreen perhaps either had not started photography, or if she had started, she did not show it with us. Or perhaps we did not know enough about her. But I also remember that in 1970, summer, we had gone to Delhi. There was a graphic workshop, printmaking workshop by Smithsonian Institution. I forget the name of the American artist who came to conduct it. About 100 artists were invited there, and we all made prints. Nasreen was also there. And I remember we made a trip of Fatehpur Sikri. When we went to Fatehpur Sikri, she had a camera called Nikon. I had Asahi Pentax K5, which I used to have for a long period of time. We both sort of madly wandered down the spaces of Fatehpur Sikri. As you know, there is nobody there. We wandered and took photos. Years later, her photograph of Fatehpur Sikri became world famous. Some image of a shadow, some image of a strip on the ground, etc. And it was, I think, about 10 years ago when I opened my own negative box and I found my Fatehpur Sikri photographs. I had taken two rolls, one in color, one in black and white, Kodachrome and Ilford. So I must have, and I finished both of them. So I had taken literally 72 photographs. Gitanjali Dang found that 2 photographs of mine and 2 photographs of Nasreen came very close. I find it not only an accident, but also a kind of a meeting of minds, that we took photograph of the same space. But with about 72 photographs, 2 can always match, if there are 2 mad photographers going around and taking pictures. So that is one story. The second story is that she used to sit in the, I do not know whether my friends in the Fine Arts College would know that there was an adda, a place called where all the students and teachers after their classes sat outside near the canteen at the steps of the art history department. And Nasreen often sat there. I used to play pranks with her. She had a little diary in which she used to scribble. I think once or twice I stole it from her. And she was mad at me, came after me. And we had, anyway, that was a friendly perk and friendly kind of a, I returned it to her. Those diaries are now all over. She used to scribble things, sometimes a word turned into something else, sometimes a form, and sometimes just nothing. That would be a blank page. And then she would turn over and move further. So what I'm trying to say is that all this was part of her makeup. The space in her little flat where she lived, the space in her painting somewhere began to interject into each other. I remember the photograph she showed me. Those photographs were of the water tanks somewhere in Bahrain where her family lived. She came. Incidentally, I had been to Bahrain. I went to Bahrain in 1969 with my friend Sunil Kothari when we made an on-the-road journey from Bombay to London. I had done a similar thing earlier from London to Bombay 3 years ago. But when we were going, we went by Iran instead of Iraq, where I had landed earlier. And there, Nasreen had told us that her brother will come to receive me. And he came. I think it was Anwar. She had Shams, Anwar, Nasreen, and Alta, four siblings. And Anwar took us around and everything. I won't go into details of it, but just to tell you, and that I, like Nasreen, we both loved music. And I wanted to have a good tape recorder, and I saw one in their shop, Sony tape recorder. And Nasreen made it possible for me to have the tape recorder a year later from Bahrain, or it came to Bombay and I went in. I still have it. That brings me to music. The Nasreen loved music, but you would be surprised, it was not instrumental music that she loved. She loved, among the musicians, Bhimsen Joshi. And there was one particular rag, I think it was Maru Bihag or Lalit. And she played it over and over. Let me use this metaphorically, that the space in which she lived, in her flat, was filled up by that music, that continuous music, classical music, by a great singer she greatly admired. And then I saw that her paintings had begun to change. At some point of time, she renounced all other forms. And as though she decided to live with lines. And then she began to draw lines. She drew crisscross, she drew straight, she drew all kinds of shapes and forms, but much of it was left with a lot of space around. It was the space around or space within that always defined her sensibility. How to keep what is not painted alive. How to make the space, I don't like this word negative space, it's not negative. It is unpainted area, undrawn area, which she somehow activated. Because the active part moved across in such a manner that you had to see the whole. You can't just see the active area. You have to see the entire frame. And at that point of time, if I may also make a comment that she chose a format. I think it was rectangular, but sometimes square format, 2 by 2, or sometimes the size of an imperial paper. But let me come to something else. That her eldest brother, name was Shams, had developed a nervous disorder. This was, I will not go into medical details. That is a debilitating experience. It gradually debilitates you, the whole body. It literally takes hold over your internal organs. And then you succumb. When Shams died, Nasreen was very, very upset. She literally felt, what is happening? Why my brother who was hale and hearty has suddenly disappeared? And you wouldn't believe it happened to Anwar, the second brother. And when Anwar fell ill, she was almost devastated. And she kept touch with him. I'm slightly privy to this, that's why I'm telling you this. And when he passed away, she was absolutely broken. It was as though she was saying, "Arey mujhe de do, why he?" Me, rather than him. But then Anwar passed away and she got it. She did get. Well, we were close friends, Friends mean it was almost like living a life which was same to all of us. Fine arts also, it's a close family unit, but at the same time, many come very close to each other. And Nasreen was extremely close to us. So, when debilitating began, her motor limbs began to get affected. And we wondered, how would Nasreen work with her hands? She works with her hand all the time, and now how will she manage? But as perhaps you know that she got all the material, kind of a table, kind of equipment with which she could draw. She got graph paper, and she got all the set squares and whatnot. Arranged it in such a manner where she could sit and draw. But as you know, this illness doesn't leave you. I used to say that she must be telling the illness. Can I give you another metaphor? You've seen film like Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman, where there is a soldier who returns from war. And he is to be gone, but he meets death in person. And he tells the death, "Let us play chess." They both played chess. And that's how this soldier kept death at bay. I would like to say that Nasreen, by working, was telling her illness, "Look, do what you like, but let me work." But then it increased further and she was not able to function that much, so she must have finally decided that she must work at least few hours, if not all the time. And she was teaching in the college, and she was an extremely popular teacher. She had literally students following her wherever she went. She used to take them round the garden, the park, showed them all kinds of little plants or leaves and flowers. My reading is, and having known her, she must be telling them that in each one of them resides a life. There is something alive in each one of them. Try to catch it. Try to catch that. How would you catch it? Not by external appearance, but by whatever means that you have at your command. You try to get that essence that is sitting inside that living thing, even a plant or a tree. And I would extend further and I would say that it could be earth, it could be sky, it could be anything. But as I was going further, as her ailment made her more and more debilitated, she resigned her job. But even while she was working, I remember she would come. We have a routine of about 8:30 to 12:30 in the morning at the practical classes where she used to teach, and then she would come home to our place in residency bungalow where we lived, and she would relax, rest until about 3 to 4 hours, and then she would go home. Another little story, that a rickshaw man would be standing outside our house for 3 hours. And we know stories of people fighting with rickshawalas. Here were all rickshawalas, literally they loved her. She would keep them for 3 hours or 4 hours. They would never ever grumble or complain. She was as though perhaps it was an act of atonement for others who were fighting with them. And she stayed there, that went there. She then worked, and she would. It was not the time of mobile phone. Even telephones didn't work on a regular basis. And I had hard time to explain to my friends to get her a telephone, but nobody managed. Well, it so happened that in 1982, I think, when I got a government honor, I thought that I can use this, and I pushed it. Finally, she got a telephone. But that was a few years before she passed away. And let me put her work in this manner. Whether I'm right or wrong, that's another story, but this is how I saw it. Her work became more and more concentrated. She became more and more almost part of her work. That she was working every day, and she would show us. She would tell us, I've done this. And as I was saying, that she was trying to keep her ailment away. And at some point of time, I don't know whether I talked to her or not, but we talked about the Sufi saints. She was interested in the Sufi. By the way, she was a Soleimani Bohra, former Soleimani Bohra family. I don't know how, whether she was a great believer or not, but she had great interest in the Sufi thought. We also talked about Zen, and she was greatly interested in the Zen masters. I was teaching in fine arts. I was teaching even Chinese and Japanese art. So I was familiar with that, and we used to chat about that. In India, there are a lot of saints, and some of them in particular, I don't remember the name of the person, they would say, an ailment is a मेहरबानी, मालिक की मेहरबानी है. It is the grace of God, grace of Almighty, that you have ill because you remember Him. You remember Him more when you are ailing than when you are well. जैसे ये तो खुदा की नियामत है. So she, in that sense, endured everything only to work, nothing else. She had no other purpose in her life. So we used to worry, कि क्या होगा? What will happen to her? She is living alone. Well, luckily some students like B.V. Suresh, who became very close to her, used to go and stay with her. There were some others. But as you know, in institutions can be very endearing and very beautiful. It can be also very harsh in the sense that students keep changing. And the new students don't know old teachers who had left the college. So they would not know why Nasreen. Only if somebody would tell them. So she would then, even after retirement, come to the college and say, she would just stand there, and I would not believe that she was so ill, and she was standing at the doorstep and telling me, मैं थोड़ा पढ़ाऊं? Can I teach a little? And I would say, yes, of course. Go ahead and meet any student you want to meet. She did that. She went on doing this, but at that point when she was unable to move, we all wondered whether she would go to Bombay or somewhere. And she finally decided to go. Now about her work, if I were to think of it, her work, as I would describe it sometimes, that it is like at times catching a shadow. As you would see, shadows fall on all kinds of objects, but if it falls on earth, on ground, it also creates patterns in the earth. But it's ephemeral. It disappears. Or sometimes, if you say that you want to catch fish in an ocean or a river or somewhere with your bare hands. But Nasreen was like that. She always wanted to grapple which was impossible. Something which she wanted to do, if she had decided to do it, she would do it. No matter whether she will succeed or not. But that was. So in that sense, it was the process that was the most important part of her work. Not just the final product, but also the way she worked. Because she lived with it. And would you, if I were to say, all these work which are absolutely not only beautiful, but also very clean and sharp and beautiful, are done at a time when she was suffering, when she had that ailment. Very difficult to connect the two. But those who were close to her knew it. So she, in a way, overcame or transcended her illness by the act of art. By using art, she went above it. She went beside it. She went somewhere where she would find a space which was her own. So in that sense, I don't think these works are entire. They can be easily fitted into minimal art, abstract art, non-figurative art. There is so much that went behind it. And it is in that sense that Nasreen achieved something, but she did not claim it. It's very interesting. She had very few exhibitions. But when she was at the peak of her career, I think it was in the 70s, I think she got an award, etc., but she should have an exhibition. And her exhibition was held, if I'm not mistaken, in the gallery Art Heritage, or what was it called at that time, Al-Qazi's Gallery. That was the first time her work was seen in a kind of a larger format. And everybody was absolutely, how would say, they were also, would you use the word that you are moved when you see these works, which are not figurative, which are not about human figures or animals or other things, but people were moved by them. He had a friend called Ramchandra Gandhi, great grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, who was a philosopher, who wrote saying that there is something of the early footprints of the, or of the early first calligraphy of early Islam. Those forms which were just straight, black and white. But he also said that these works have now gone beyond. Geeta Kapoor wrote a piece in which she said that she was like, it is an elegy for an unclaimed lover. And that was printed on the middle page of Times of India. First time on an artist, such an article would appear. But let me just finish it by saying what further Ramchandra Gandhi said. He said that at some point her work had gone beyond the eyes of normal human beings, that they had become the subject of the eyes of the angels, of the farishtas. He even wrote, interestingly, that when her exhibition closes at night, angels would be scrambling, lighting the gallery by their own inner light, and to look at her pictures. That's where Nasreen was. Thank you.
Thank you, Gulam Bhai. That was truly moving and taking us down memory lane of Nasreen's life and sharing with us who she was as a person and a friend outside being such an incredible artist. I would also like to thank Mr. Maasanori for collaborating with Space Studio and this opportunity to host Nasreen Mohammedi's works with Glenbarra Art Museum. It's very special to have so many of her works displayed in Baroda, which was also home for her. We hope that over the next few weeks, students, friends, and people from Baroda are able to see this exhibition and see so many of her works in one space. Thank you so much.